Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities behind Black business. And as you know, every Wednesday night rather, we feature a guest on our show who has a business here in the Chicago area. And tonight we have Michelle Lowe Davis, who is a teacher. She's an entrepreneur. She's also an author, and she hosts a bookstore here in the Chicago area. So, Michelle, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you know, we are a nonprofit organization, and we're working to enhance the awareness and support of Black owned businesses here in the Chicago area. And we're doing this because we feel that through supporting our businesses, we can help sustain our communities here in the Chicago area. Our businesses help us to circulate dollars in our communities. And if you look at our communities here on the south side and the west side of Chicago, and in so many other states where Black people, populate the areas, these areas are being gentrified. And what happens is people who do own businesses in our communities don't give back. We have many people from our Arab communities and people from the Korean communities who have come into the Black communities here in Chicago, um, and have been able over decades to amass wealth. And it's been off of the backs of Black people and Black communities. And it's just really not fair when you're able to set up a business in a community and you're able to make money and the people are spending money with you and you're not giving back. And that is why that just contributes to the lack of resources that we get, the lack of resources that we're addressing as far as when we're looking at what we get from our government, when we look at what we get from our schools, then no money coming from the local businesses. Um, it does not help. And it's a wonder that we're still standing. And so we felt that we need to help increase the awareness of our Black businesses. We have over 800 Black businesses here in the Chicago area. And a lot of our people are just not aware of these businesses. And we're definitely not supporting them to the degree that we should be supporting them. We would like to see our aldermen have more street events, more festivals, um, to give us an opportunity to our communities and our businesses, to give them an opportunity to showcase themselves and introduce themselves to people in our communities. Black businesses are more likely to hire people from the community. They're more likely to give back. They're more likely to do business with other Black entrepreneurs. And so all of this helps to circulate that dollar. That's what's going to help to strengthen our community. So that's why we have this organization, Michelle, and this is why we host this podcast every Wednesday night. And as I was searching through, looking to see, just looking at our Black bookstores, I happened to stumble on Sebastian's Dream. And I said, oh my goodness, we have another Black bookstore here in Chicago. And that's why I reached out to you. And what the work that you're doing is so important. because you're trying to enhance the development of our children. And so we support our Black bookstores. As I've said many times on this network, we used to have 22 Black bookstores in Chicago. We were down to two. Now there's a resurgence, and you are a part of that resurgence of Black books, but Black bookstores. And so we feature a Black bookstore on our website every month. If you go to rrgbc.org, we list the bookstores here in the Chicago area, and we also have a book giveaway. That's how important we feel reading is. And we're going to talk about that with you a little further on in this interview as to why reading is so important. Um, but we, in our book giveaway, we feature a Black bookstore. That bookstore selects a book of the month, and one of our subscribers becomes eligible to win that book free of charge. We pay for the book, the purchase of the book, and the shipping. And we want the vendor to ship the book directly, and would expect that the person that wins the book would do business with our bookstores. We know everybody goes to Amazon. Amazon is convenient. Amazon, has a wealth of books and materials, clothing, everything else, you can get on Amazon. But we need to support our bookstores here in Chicago. So I do want to say to you that we're inviting Sebastian's Dream to be our bookstore of the month for September. And then you will get to select a book, and we will feature that book for the month of September, and one of our subscribers will win a copy of that book.
Well,
Okay?
thank you.
Absolutely. Also, the Southside. Oh, and one more thing regarding our books. We want our local schools and libraries to give contracts to our Black bookstores. So we have a petition, and we ask you to go to Save Black Bookstore Chicago, change.org, Save Black Bookstore Chicago, change.org. Sign our petition to help us get dollars for our bookstores. All right.
I agree.
Some of
I
these
totally agree.
contracts that CPS is given to only a few distributors, some of those contracts should go, into our local distribution. So that's what that petition is about. So we ask that people please go and sign that petition. And lastly, our Southside Community Federal Credit Union, located at 55th and Wentworth in the mall, right there at Garfield and the Dan Ryan Expressway. They have been there for over 20 years, servicing the community, providing loans to people who live in the community, providing financial literacy to people who live in the community. And in order for a bank to thrive, they need us to open up accounts. So that's something that we can do. Everybody is not going to do certain things, but there are certain things that you can do. And one of the things you can do is go to Southside Community Federal Credit Union and open up an account to help that institution. That is a Black-owned institution here in Chicago. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk to Michelle. Michelle, as I mentioned, she is a teacher. She has a bookstore, and she's also an author. So those are some areas that we want to cover. And Michelle, also we'll talk about your entrepreneur endeavors and your company that you want to start and why you want to start that company. We'll talk about that. But first of all, how long have you had your bookstore?
We started Sebastian's Dream in 2014, and it was really a weird start. I was teaching before that.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian was born in 2010, and I had started going back to school. uh, to teach, to not only teach, but getting a master's degree in teaching and learning. And one of the classes that I had was a creative writing class.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to write a children's book, or we had to write some sort of book. So I chose to write a children's book. And I wrote Sebastian's Dream in class.
Mm-hmm.
And the book sat in the closet for years. Yeah, it really did. I stopped working because my son had autism
Mm-hmm.
or has autism. And so I started to stay home so that I could take care of him, look after his education, make sure that he was getting into the right schools, all of that. Um, and the book sat in the closet for years. Several people had read it. Even the classmates that I had read it, when I read it out loud, said, "Oh my God, you should publish that book." I never
Mm-hmm.
thought about it again. Again, it sat in the closet. So a couple of other people read it and they said to me, "You should really publish this book." I'm like, yeah, okay. So I sat down one day and self published the book, published it through an Amazon distributor. And that's how the book initially got published.
Okay.
Somewhere down the line, I said, well, let me start a website just to kind of promote the book, show the book, try to get her to people, let them know that Sebastian's Dream is a real thing. It's a book. You can buy it here. Um, and so that site was born. Uh, put it on Facebook, put it on all the social media, all of those places. And it did pretty good at first. The responses started to wane, but
Mm-hmm.
I kept pushing forward and started an online bookstore. And in starting the online bookstore, which is the title Sebastian's Dream, which is to my son, um, I started to write other books. And my niece, which was a funny story as well, my niece, she saw that Sebastian had a book, and so she wanted a book.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was how our second book was born. KDK Plays Lady for a Day.
Okay.
And then I continued on because I felt inspired to just continue. A lot of times the ideas would come to me as I was walking through my house. And something would come to me, and I would get on my phone and I would, write down a note or write down a paragraph or something that I wanted to utilize to create the next book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so our third book was or is My Pops is Tops, and that's a dedication to Sebastian and his dad and their closeness and their bond between them. My fourth book I wrote because of an incident that Sebastian had at school, and I wanted to put out that while boys and girls are the same, there are still many differences between them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was the catalyst for the fourth book. So I still write. I'm a lot more busy than I have been in the past. So it takes me a little more time to write books, but I have about maybe three more that are sitting in queue to be written, to be finished. One of which is a autobiography for Sebastian. It's written in the third person, so it talks about his experiences with autism, things
Mm-hmm.
that he sees, um, what he feels, um, just his life in general. Um, and so you may see someone behind me, and if you do, that's probably Sebastian. but,
Okay. I would love to see Sebastian. He
but
decides to come to the
um,
camera.
and then there's another book. His grandmother on his father's side passed some years ago, about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it's difficult to explain to a child with autism, especially if
Mhm.
they're nonverbal, death. And
Okay.
so I decided to write a book about his grandmother and her passing to kind of help him understand what death is, and
Mhm.
that the person is not actually, while they're not physically here, they're still here.
Okay.
Um, so those are things that I'm still working on, uh, because some of the things that are going into the books are delicate. So you have to kind of think about how you want to word things before you just say, okay, I'm going to publish a book.
Sure.
And be cognizant of your audience when
Absolutely.
you are writing certain things,
Hmm.
particularly things such as, touchy things such as death.
Now, are
And
you writing the books for a certain age,
mhm.
or are you
uh,
writing the
the
books for other children with
mhm.
autism? Um, who are you writing the books for?
the Katie K plays Lady for a Day, Sebastian's Dream, Girls and Boys Are Alike but Different, um, and My Pops is Tops are for the age groups of infants through, I would say, 8.
Hmm.
Sebastian's Dream talks about it's an experience with Sebastian and his dad in a dream state. And so, in that dream state, Sebastian's dad is asking him what he wants to be when he grows up.
Hmm.
And so, they go through the various stages and discuss the various employment options or options for things that you can do when you grow up, like such as being a chef or being a lawyer or being a doctor. It talks about all the career options that are out there. And he
Hmm.
asks Sebastian what it is that he wants to do. And so they
Hmm.
talk about that. Katie K plays Lady for a Day is a mother daughter story. And in that story, Katie K and her mom play dress up for a day when Katie can't go outside to play.
Hmm.
Um, My Pops is Tops again is uh, a father and son story, and it's for any father and son. Again, from infancy through the age of 8. Um, and then Boys and Girls Are Alike but Different uh, is for any age group from infancy through age 8. It gives them insight onto the things that girls and boys share that are alike, but those things that are different about them. Um, and so it kind of helps them to understand themselves in their likenesses and their differences.
So I know at this point you have mentioned that Sebastian has autism,
Hmm.
which is a developmental uh, difficulty,
Hmm.
neurological developmental issue, where an individual has difficulty communicating and interacting with other people. And
Hmm.
so it sounds as though your books, Sebastian's Dream, and the relationship with his father, and
Hmm.
people being same and different, are
Hmm.
ways of imparting some understanding about relationships that
Hmm.
perhaps Sebastian might not have an opportunity to experience like other children would have.
Hmm. Hmm.
Also, topics that parents could be having, with their children, whether they're having, developmental delay disorder, or if they're within the normal realm.
Hmm.
And so reading is very important.
Hmm.
Um, we stress reading here, um, for our people to have knowledge of ourselves and who we are as a people, to know our history. I remember in Nigeria they have the griots or griot,
Mm-hmm.
people who carry the history, the stories
Mm-hmm.
of their culture, from one generation to the other. And they do it with storytelling, they do it through music, they do it through talking. But it's very important to know your culture. Like they say, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. And there's so much about our people that we don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
it limits our perspectives on things,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And as a teacher, you know how important reading is, you know. And like if you were talking to a parent, I'm sure many times you have shared with a parent how important reading is
Mm-hmm.
uh, to any child.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, from infant and then on up to adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So if you were to talk to a parent, what would you say to them to share with them why reading to your children is so important?
Well, first of all, from infancy, excuse me, from infancy with a child, that is when the mind is like a sponge.
Hmm.
Their minds are very open. They're mindful of the things that we say. They're mindful of things that they hear. Um, we think because they're babies that they don't understand many things.
Hmm.
And so we have to impart those things into them. Of course, yes, we do have to impart those things into them. So reading and giving and building on vocabulary for children from infancy is vitally important. The words that you use when you're talking to your child, when you're reading to your child, the types of words that you're imparting into them are vitally important. It's a children's book, whether it's a history book, whatever kind of book it is that you choose to read to your child, providing them with information, providing them with vocabulary, building on those 25 words that an infant needs by the time they reach the age of 1 or 2 is very important.
Hmm.
Simple words: can, I can, uh, uh, trust, honesty. These are words that even 2-year-olds say
Hmm.
if given the vocabulary to say that. Um, I have run into parents who have been to building on their children's vocabulary, and I stress to them the importance of reading to your child, spending even if it's 15 minutes out of your day. It takes about maybe 10 minutes to read a short story. It's not a long period of time. I, as a teacher, I've taught infants. I've been with infants. I've been with 2-year-olds. I've been with 3 to 5-year-olds.
Hmm.
2-year-olds are the toughest because they don't sit still that long.
Sure.
So their attention span in terms of sitting for a story, let's say even a Dr. Seuss book,
Hmm.
is not really that long.
Hmm.
So if you find a book that you can get them to read, then the best thing to do is to find the shortest story that you can, um, read it, be as animated as possible.
Hmm.
Because when you read stories to them like that and you add the animation to the story, build on the character of the story, it makes them more interested. They're
And
listening.
pointing to the pictures,
You're
you
pointing
know,
to the pictures.
pointing
You're
to the
asking
pictures,
them questions. You're
asking questions.
asking them to point to the pictures. As a matter of fact, I was reading a story and I asked one of my students to point to a frog. Now, these were teeny tiny frogs. I didn't even see half the frogs, but she found the frogs. She understood what I was saying to her. She looked for them. She pointed to them. So
Sure.
she understood that I was at what I was asking of her. She understood the word frog.
Mm-hmm.
If if we weren't reading to our children, if we're not pointing out things to them, if we're not giving them the mode of discernment to be able to look for things in books, to point out things in books, then we're doing them a huge disservice.
It also enhances their world knowledge.
Absolutely.
Books can take
Absolutely.
you books can take you places.
Absolutely. It builds
Places you
on
may
language
never go,
development.
or places you may inspire to go, to
Hmm.
think about things that you've never thought about. Um, Enhance your critical thinking skills.
Hmm.
And it's a good time for parents to share time
With their children.
with their children. And reading stories to your children can be a learning experience for you.
Absolutely.
I remember the first
Absolutely.
time I read the book about Harriet Tubman's. I think it was called Freedom Road.
Hmm.
Pretty thick book.
Hmm.
She was in maybe third or fourth grade, and I read that book cover to cover with her. I learned things about Harriet Tubman that I didn't know, you know, and I was able
Hmm.
to explain some things to her that I knew that if she was just reading it on her own, that
Hmm.
she would not get. Now, given you have a child with autism, why do you find reading so important?
It's very funny because a lot of people think that children with autism don't understand.
Hmm.
There's a huge misconception for a lot of people out here that they don't understand. They can't. Some of them can't read, especially if they're nonverbal.
Right.
Um, Sebastian actually was able to read by the time he was 3.
Hmm.
He would, and this is very funny because we didn't think he could read. We just thought that he was pointing to something because of the color.
Hmm.
Uh, when he was when he was when he was about a year old, I started him to drinking kefir, and Sebastian, I started him to drinking kefir, and I would get different flavors, and so I would get like maybe cherry and raspberry and things like that. He knew the difference between the cherry and the raspberry. And so he would point to the cherry. If somebody said to him cherry, he would point to cherry. And we were like, does this read? And
Hmm.
he actually was reading. He can
Okay.
actually sit down and read a book. We were so excited when he went to, I think he was at Quantum Leap Academy at the time, and he was with one of his therapists. The entire school erupted when he read an entire book. We've always read to Sebastian. My husband is always talking to him, sharing information with him. We talk to him all the time. So,
Hmm.
though his vocabulary may be limited,
Hmm.
um, the words that he can read, they're vast.
Now, what about his comprehension?
His comprehension is very good. I, I
Okay.
I'm amazed at a lot of the things that he can read and comprehend and pick up.
Mhm.
I work with him because he's homeschooled, I work with him on various definitions of words. I introduce him to larger words. We sit together and I have him pick out those definitions. I was pleasantly surprised when I started working again. Unfortunately, there are times when my mother has to work with him and give him his schoolwork. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that a lot of work on his own. And he can pick out various
Hmm.
definitions on his own. Uh, uh, he can read and comprehend and pick out the answers that are left for him. Um,
Now,
my
how
mother,
old
she
was
gets
Sebastian? How old was Sebastian when you started reading to him?
Sebastian was a baby. I've been reading to him
Reading him
since he
since
was
he
an
was a
infant.
baby. Mm-hmm.
So I started reading to him at infancy, and continued reading to him and with him, introducing him to various books. His dad introduces him to various books. He sits and reads with him. So Sebastian has had his grandmother that passed, sat and read with him and bought various books to sit and read with him. So he's constantly got people around him that read with him, help him to read, introduce him to various words, uh, phonetically help him to say the words, pronounce the words. He has speech therapists that help him pronounce words. So he's constantly being by phonics, verbiage, various words.
Does he have special topics that he likes, special types of books that he likes?
It's interesting because my husband likes a lot of documentaries, and my husband reads a lot of uh, historical literature.
Hmm.
And so he reads a lot of historical literature to Sebastian. He actually picked up a book this morning that my husband was really, really surprised that he picked up. It was the
Hmm.
history of it was the history of something. I can't remember what it is right now off the top of my head.
Hmm.
But my husband was like, "Did you see what he picked up this morning? Let me show you what your son picked up this morning."
Hmm.
So he does things that amaze us all the time,
Okay.
um, in where his knowledge base is, and um, he will pick up a Bible. He's picked up Bibles and
Hmm.
read through Bibles, looked through Bibles. He's gone through various religious texts and looked through religious texts. So he just does a lot of things that for the average person looking at him and thinking that he's not, or knowing that he's nonverbal, would be amazed to see him do.
Hmm. So obviously, the reading has enhanced his world knowledge,
Absolutely.
uh, enhancing his vocabulary, which can ultimately impact his communication, his level of communication with
Hmm.
other people.
Hmm.
Would you
He's
say?
comfortable. He's comfortable with us here at home, and
Hmm.
so he'll use a little bit of verbiage with us.
Hmm.
Not much when he's being himself at home. It's a huge comfort zone, but put in a situation where he's forced to utilize the skill of speaking with others, he
Sure.
will. He
Okay.
will.
Because that is a challenge for a lot of people with autism. Um, a lot of people think they don't want to talk.
Hmm.
You'll often hear people say, well, individuals with autism, they don't like talking to people, or they only like talking to adults. And if you think about it, and then he's comfortable talking with you,
Hmm.
uh, but you are going to give him the time and the space to, get his thoughts together,
Mhm.
put his words together to say what he has to say. But the
Mhm.
dynamics, the directions that a conversation goes in so many different directions, it's difficult for individuals with autism to keep up. And it's not only that they don't want to talk, but it's difficult,
Mhm.
And so if he's put in a position with, I believe the time that you've spent with him, the time that you've taken to read to him and
Mhm.
and give him all of this information, helps him
Mhm.
in those particular situations. So this is why, reading to all of our children is very important, and
Mhm.
especially with individuals with autism. And I think
Mhm.
some parents should not assume that just because their children are not responding, as you said earlier, are
Mhm.
not comprehending what's
Mhm.
going on. I know when you have like a preschooler or a 2-year old that might be nonverbal. One way of finding out about their pragmatic language skills is watching how they play, watching what they do with objects. And that lets you know their level of understanding. If they got a spoon and they're pretending to eat or feed the animal or what have you, a dog or the baby,
Mhm.
that lets you know they know what to do with that spoon. They know the function of that spoon, as opposed to if they're just throwing things. So
Mhm.
yeah, what you're doing is very important, and then the fact that you've written these books, and these books that you've written have been inspired by Sebastian's experiences. I would say in Sebastian's dream, what is the main idea of that dream, without giving the story away? What is the main
Behind
idea of that book? Yeah, behind Sebastian's
the main
dream.
idea behind Sebastian's Dream, the book.
Yes,
The
the book.
main idea behind that is to help children uh, in terms of following a dream. Their
Hmm.
dream may be to be a chef. Their
Hmm.
dream may be to be a teacher. Their dream may be to be an astronaut.
Hmm.
Uh, it's to give them options and to
Hmm.
know that there are so many options out there for them.
Hmm.
Um, in thinking about those options, you can talk to your family, you can
Hmm.
talk to your fathers, you can talk to your moms, you can talk to whoever you choose to speak with about it. Um, but realize your dream, and not to give well, if I say that, I will give a spoiler alert. But some kids want to grow up to be like their parents,
Sure.
and that's okay.
And then,
That's
like you
okay.
say, you're giving them options. You're giving them different options. Um, we tend to think about only certain careers, just all kinds of careers out here. And then this is also going to lead me to your other project that you have on the table, that you're working on in terms of creating a social um, outlet for your son. You want to, um, there are many of our autistic children, after they graduate, because they can stay at schools now until the end of their 22nd birthday, and in
Hmm.
some instances 23. And so what
Hmm.
happens after that? Some may have the ability to go to college. Many
Hmm.
don't. And there has to be a place in our society for them to be able to
Hmm.
make their contribution. You know, they
I agree.
deserve to have social experiences. You know, to the extent that they're able to have. So everybody's doing. That's what that least restrictive environment. Uh,
Hmm.
a term that they use in the school, giving them the opportunity to do the best that they can do. But that also needs to extend outside of school. And so I want you to
Hmm.
talk about what you're trying to do in terms of developing other outlets for Sebastian, because I know in our community, um, the resources, the
Hmm.
opportunities for our children in our communities, especially individuals with disabilities, especially
Hmm.
individuals with autism, is quite limited. So I would
Hmm.
like for you to talk to us about what you're working on as far as that goes.
Well, let me start with a story. So, one of our neighbors invited us to a birthday party one year. And so Sebastian and I had gone. Um, it was at the boathouse, I think, on 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I, I felt so isolated. And I can only imagine if I, as Sebastian's parent, felt isolation, I can only imagine how he may have felt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were ignored in the cake line. And we had gone outside to sit in the park, and there were some boys that were running and playing. And Sebastian wanted to go, and I couldn't let him go, only because they had run out of sight. Sebastian being nonverbal. When you have a nonverbal child, it is difficult to let them run and play with other children if they're not going to be within your sight.
Sure.
One, because they cannot tell you if something happens to them. If it's not something physical that you can see, if there's not a change in their behavior or something that gives you any indicator that something has gone left, then it's difficult. Uh, and so when I couldn't let him go with the other boys, he got this really, really sad look on his face. And it broke, when I tell you it broke my heart. It literally broke my heart. And it's a pain that is indescribable because you want for your children to be able to, or your child to be able to do everything that any other child can do.
Mm-hmm.
And you want them to be able to run and play hide and seek and do all of those things. But again, with a nonverbal child, that's not always the case. Um, and so I was sitting on a park bench, still at the same party, and I was in tears. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a different way of doing things, a different way for children with special needs to be able to have a place to call their own. Um, and at that time, Sebastian's Village of Friends was just a thought. Um, through further experiences, the thought started to get bigger, and it grew and it grew and it continued to grow, with input from friends and family. It grew into this huge thing. And with research, and talking to other entrepreneurs uh, outside of Chicago, um, it just kind of snowballed. Um, Putting Sebastian into various schools, getting him various services. I noticed that whenever I had to get those services for him, any entertainment that I had to get for him that involved special needs was always far away from where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
at least 20 to 30, maybe 40, 50 miles from where I live. Um, there are a lot of special needs children on the south side of Chicago that require services, that where their parents require respite from the day to day. And I hesitate to use the term dealing, but raising. Let me say that
Mm-hmm.
the day to day raising and rearing of a special needs child.
Sure.
Um, while they love their children, it can be tiring,
Mm-hmm.
it can be exhausting. Um, and they too themselves need a place of respite. Um, so Sebastian's Village of Friends, to give you a little bit about it, would be an edutainment center for children with special needs, for their parents and for themselves,
Okay.
where they can engage with like peers. Um, it doesn't mean that neurotypical siblings are not invited. They're invited as well, but it would help them to engage with their peers, build on their social emotional skills, build on their gross motor skills, build on any skill where they may be falling short.
Mm-hmm.
We would have readings for them. We would have uh, arts and crafts for them. Um, we call them spaces. My business model calls them spaces, and in those spaces, they would learn music, they would learn art, they would be read to, they would be able to go to a restaurant. Um, where they can sit in Sebastian's Village of Friends and they can eat with their family without people, uh, you know, making the parent and making the child feel as though they're not welcome because they
Sure.
squeak or they squawk or they do
Mm-hmm.
something different than another child.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be uh, those leering eyes on parents and the child. Um, we want to offer them bowling. We want to there's just so many spaces that we want to offer them where they're entertained but they're learning at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a thing where they're learning without knowing that they're learning. And that's the fun part about
Sure.
Sebastian Village of Friends. When
Sure.
you're being educated without knowing that you're being educated, that's the best part of being educated.
Sure.
It's fun. So,
Mm-hmm.
so these are things that we want to bring to parents, uh, on our initial launch. And
Okay.
then, somewhere down the line, we will want to offer them those services that they can't get on the south side of Chicago. We want to offer them the speech, the occupational, the behavioral, all of those things that are difficult for them to get on the south side of Chicago. I
Now,
myself
how
have
how
traveled
old
as
is
far as Evanston
how
for
old is
my son.
Sebastian now? And ask you
I'm sorry,
how old is
Sebastian's
Sebastian?
13.
He's 13. Okay.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He turned 13 in April. But still, there's a lot of children. I mean, I teach children every day, and I
Mm-hmm.
see uh, some children who need early intervention, but parents are not receptive to it because
Mm-hmm.
they are in denial. I myself, as a parent, when Sebastian was first diagnosed with autism, in when he was 2, I was in total denial. I said, "No, that's not it."
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand where parents are from. Our job
Sure.
at Sebastian's Village of Friends is not only to educate them through entertainment, but also to educate the parent as well. Bring them resources, bring them information, help them to form parent groups,
Mm-hmm.
help them to be with parents that are going through and sharing the same experiences that they are sharing, or what is now X, something on X. X or Facebook or things
Sure.
like that, to be able to communicate with each other about what you're experiencing and share experiences and resources, and talk about how you deal with the various that your autistic child or your palsy or your child that has Down syndrome, how you can help one another and build on a community within Sebastian's Village.
This is absolutely awesome. It's beautiful, and it's needed, and it's especially needed in our community. I think we have our
Mm-hmm.
screen has frozen. Are you still there? Are you still
Mm-hmm.
there? Okay. Yeah. This is so needed. As you say, you have to go so far outside of our community to get these kinds of services. And even though a lot of services are provided in the school, as I was saying, that um, least restricted environment does not end within the realm of the school, but it also needs to be
Mm-hmm.
embraced outside of school within our community. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see this going forward and expanding into where, other people, a lot of times people just don't understand. And I think if they
Mm-hmm.
understood, it would make a big difference. I'm a speech pathologist, and I've worked with children at a high school, local high school here. And I chose to do some groups in art class, where all of the
Mm-hmm.
students came to art class, and had some of the autistic students to sit with other students and they didn't know that they could talk. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
many of them were limited in their ability to talk. They could maybe request things, so we were working
Mm-hmm.
on making requests, practicing, engaging in greetings, saying hello and how you doing. And after a while, many of them start saying, a lot of colloquial expressions, like what's up, and giving high five, and sure, they need that experience, they need that opportunity. It's just they need more time to work on
Mm-hmm.
those things that other people can take and just pick up right away, or learn a
Mm-hmm.
concept and just generalize it right away. um, and so this is a beautiful thing that you're doing through your writing of your books. And I hope that, and I expect that you will be continuing to write, because as you see more happening, you'll get more ideas, and you'll be jotting those
Mm-hmm.
ideas down like you're doing already. And you'll be writing more books that give more insight into the world of autism, into the
Mm-hmm.
world of children with disabilities. You know, like I said, they come here and they have a contribution to make, and even helping some of them to explore a career or something that they would like to do
Mm-hmm.
as work. Did Sebastian ever indicate what he would like to do when you start talking about those
You
different
know,
careers?
I think Sebastian is very, very interested in music. He's
Ah,
been musically inclined since he's been able to pick up anything that had any type of music to it.
so
Um,
does he play an instrument or?
he plays keyboard, actually.
Okay.
Um, he's played several instruments. He's played with several instruments. Uh, he's had several ukuleles. He's
Mm-hmm.
had keyboards. He's had tambourines. He's had drums. But the one that seems to stick with him is the keyboard. So,
Now, does he
so
have
we're
an affinity towards a certain type of genre of music?
he likes all music. It's really
Oh,
weird because my taste and my husband's taste are on total opposite ends of the spectrum. And my husband loves jazz.
Mm-hmm.
My husband loves neo soul. He
Okay.
likes classical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he likes uh, he likes a little bit of rock. He will listen to a little bit of rock. Um, Me, I'm not a huge jazz person. I will, I'll stomach it, but it's not, it's not my go-to. Um, I'm more of a classic rock fan. I will admit to that. I am a classic rock fan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like anything from the 70s, 80s, and 60s, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, I love Stevie Wonder. He is my absolute favorite person in the entire world. My favorite
Okay.
artist. And so, Sebastian has grown up listening to a variety of music, from jazz to classical to rock to R&B, from, like I said, the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
So he likes it all.
So his for music is pretty vast.
Pretty
His
vast.
dad even listens to a little bit of country.
Mm-hmm.
At the
Oh.
time. So he gets various and
Mm-hmm. Wow. So yeah, I mean, he being around other children, playing music, being around other children, playing games, exploring different types of occupations. Um, do you see Sebastian, being able to do any type of work in the community, or maybe have his own little business?
well, we're hoping for that. Um, and I think with Sebastian's Village of Friends, one of the big things that we would like to do is to hire special needs children growing into special needs adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
One, because that is a huge concern for parents. Will my child be able to care for themselves if
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer here?
Sure.
Um, and so that's definitely one of the things that we would definitely do without a doubt, is
Mm-hmm.
to hire special needs children or hire special needs teenagers or adults, um, so that they can make a living wage and be able to take care of themselves. Um, and, uh, seeing this into fruition, of course, yeah, we would, make a way for Sebastian to be able to maintain the business, um, with lawyers and the like. But as it stands right now, if we had to, say that Sebastian could do something occupationally, at 13, I can't really say that, he could do much.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I will say about autistic children is that when you show them something, and depending on where they may be on the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
you can show them maybe once or twice.
Sure.
And if you show them once or twice what it is that you are looking for or is required of them, they get it.
Absolutely.
And one of the strong points for autistic children, and I will say this, for some chains, they recognize that
Mm-hmm.
Jewel hires autistic people,
Sure.
um, or Albertsons, I should say. That's the parent company for Jewel. Mariano's hires autistic people. Um, there are some tech people that are autistic.
That's right.
They say that Elon Musk is autistic.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots and lots of areas that where autistic people are useful, they thrive, they grow, they and if we go by an Elon Musk, they make millions.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um,
They
so
just have to
never,
be, they have to be given that opportunity.
absolutely,
They have to be given that exposure.
absolutely. So
And
never
that's what you're
underestimate them.
doing.
Never, never underestimate them. Beethoven
Absolutely.
actually was autistic, and he's one of
Absolutely.
the greatest classical writers or musicians that is known to the European world.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another one. Einstein was autistic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he came up with the theory of relativity. So never underestimate the power behind an autistic person or any child or any person
That's
with
right.
special needs, regardless of what that special need may be.
That's right. That's right. And I like the fact that our website director indicated the creating change through literature and empathy, not sympathy,
Mm-hmm.
but understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to extend yourself, to try to understand and
Mm-hmm.
embrace in people in our community that have some difficulties or have some differences
Mm-hmm.
is very important. And so what you're doing, your work that you're doing is beautiful. And family, we've been talking to Michelle Lowe Davis. She is a teacher. She has a son with autism. She has authored is 4 books. Am I correct? 4 books so far.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. She has authored 4 books. A lot of her inspiration has come from her son uh, with autism. And I am definitely looking forward to hearing more about um, Sebastian's village of friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important because, as you said, we have so many people on our side of town, and we don't have the same resources. Uh,
Absolutely. No, we
but
don't.
like parents have to do, like you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
rolling up your sleeve, and you're making it happen. You're not complaining, worrying about what somebody else is doing and not doing. You're making it happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what makes you so special.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, would you like to have any closing remarks? I do want to mention um, our book of the month, Rose Cafe. She has an online bookstore, and she is a special ed teacher. And she has an online bookstore, and it's called Rose Cafe. She's from the Roseland area here in Chicago. And the book that we selected for this month was Three Mothers, and this is by Malika Tubbs. And Three Mothers talks about the mother of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and James
Mm-hmm.
Baldwin, and how they were able to instill resistance and an understanding of how valuable our people are in the work that they did. And here you are, look what you're doing for your son, Sebastian. So that's just a great thing. So go to rrgbc.org and subscribe, and you can possibly become a winner of this book. And then next month, Michelle, Sebastian's Dream will be our bookstore of the month, and you will let us know which book you want to uh, recommend for our audience.
Awesome.
All right. So, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, I'd like to thank anyone who was listening today. I hope that I imparted something into you, uh, some greater understanding about the importance of reading to your child, the importance of having empathy for children with special needs, the difficulty for parents of children with special needs, and just a bit more understanding about the lack of resources that we have in our community to help not only the children with special needs, but to help their parents as well. So I'm hoping that, we can get more information out there to help parents um, not be in denial, and to understand that autism or any special need is not a death sentence for your child. You would be amazed at what your child can do. You
Mm-hmm.
would be amazed at the information that an autistic person or child could impart in you,
That's right.
um, and the learning that you could get from them. So I would just say, going forward, uh, read to your children, read to them every day,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's a short story, even if they do have a special need, read to them. Read, 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 read.
That's
Because
right.
reading goes a long way in a child's development.
Mm-hmm. And even for adults, reading enhances the brain cells.
Hmm.
Reading enhances your intellectual and your emotional IQ. So even for adults going into their senior years, it helps to limit the decline in our brain cells with reading. So reading is important, and reading is definitely important, as we say, to uplift our community with knowledge of who we are. So,
Absolutely.
how can people get in touch with you, Michelle? How can they go and buy your books? Um, where are you?
You can go to www.sebastiansdream.com, or you can call me at 773-701-8485.
Okay. And you have curbside service, right?
I'm sorry?
You have curbside service?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. All right. Great. So she has a bookstore. She's written these books, and I would definitely recommend them. All right. So I want to thank you for taking time to be with us tonight,
Well, thank
Michelle.
you for having me.
And
This was so exciting.
this podcast, along with all of our other podcasts, are archived on our website. So you can go back and view them at any time. You can also go to rrgbc.org, where we have an online store where you can purchase items that help our organization to do what we're doing. Um, and you can subscribe, and you can also make donations. All right. So have a wonderful night. And again, Michelle, thank you for coming.
Thank you.